What's going on, everybody? It is Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and this week we are doing another Blues Budget Brews. This week's video will actually be yet another custom budget brew. They've been coming in fast and quick and in abundance, and I think its last 7 videos have been custom brews. This is another one. This one comes from a nice lady who sent me a message requesting a deck with a very specific set of criteria in mind. At first I thought it was for something to play for fun and very lighthearted. It was supposed to be, as she requested, was an anti-flying deck. Then, as I originally thought to do, was a spider deck, just because it was anti-flying. I thought it would be fun and you know, not too high-powered, but enough to get the job done. And then I asked her, for some reason, because I was like, this isn't working the way I wanted to, what are you playing that you need it for? And then she told me, and one of them was the Dragon, and I thought to myself, well, that's not going to work with spiders. So I delved deeper, figured out more about what she really needed. She still needed anti-flying, but I came up with a much better solution. The problem is, I have 2 cards missing from the deck. I had to order them, and they have not come in yet, but I want to get this deck out to her as soon as possible. So one of them was, unfortunately, as you can tell, I don't have the commander up here that would be, and I don't have a combo piece. So the cards I'm missing are, the commander is Grand Arbiter Augustin IV, and then I have Dranith Magistrate. They're both on their way, so I can get this packed up and sent out to her. So why did I pick this? Because she needs to stop from being attacked, and the other thing she needed was, the 2 commanders that she's going up against, one of them was a black-red, I can't remember, I think it was Strafe or something like that, where they can play creatures for free. The Dragon can play creatures for free. This is what I came up with to help stop it. I sent to the list. She loves it. I'm actually thinking about making something close to this for myself. So, what does Grand Arbiter Augustine do? Well, 2 colors, white and blue, for a 2/3, and it makes all white spells that you cast cost 1 less, all blue spells that you cast cost 1 less, and all spells your opponents cast cost 1 more. This is where we get a Staxy build, is what I call it. So that's the, I'm going to have it up here for you to see. Hopefully I'll get it in the next couple days so I can send this out to her. But I'll have it up here so you can actually look at it and how it reads. So we're going Staxy, you know, not so much on non-creature spells like a lot of hate bears do. We're going to do a build for not being able to be attacked. So, as I always do, let's get into the lands. It's a blue-white deck, so we're going to go pretty quick with all this, and I'll get through it as fast as I can, hopefully. This one was a little bit more unfriendly budget, I guess you could say. I was given the opportunity to build a little bit above $100, so there's going to be a little bit of different stuff in here that's a little bit more on the costly side. So I had to sacrifice a little bit on the lands, but not as much as normal. So we're going to, with Prairie Stream, because it's 2, it has the 2 land types, and it can come into play untapped. Port Town can also come into play untapped, and if you want to read everything about some of the stuff, you're going to have to pause the video. Nimbus Maze, so it comes in untapped, can tap to add a colorless. You can do a white or blue with activations if you control the other one. So white if you control an island, blue if you control plains. Sky-Cloud Expanse, Temple of Enlightenment, and then we're going to have the tap lands, obviously, because we're still on a budget. It's not a very heavy budget, but it was about 140. The Guild Gate, Meandering River, Tranquil Cove, Azorius Chancery, just because it has, you know, it's a bounce land, and you can utilize that in some ways, in some form. Exotic Orchard, it's basically going to turn into blue for the most part, because white's not heavily played, but some people play it, so it gives you the opportunity to come in untapped. Mystic Sanctuary, because there will be a lot of instants in this deck, so you can get them back. A couple sorceries too. Tectonic Edge, because I say it every single video, I always put some kind of land destruction because you don't know what you're going to face. I did it twice on this one because this is definitely going to be one of those ones where you want to continually be able to destroy their best land. And then Plains and Islands, pretty basic. I believe I got 35 lands in here. Hopefully that's enough. If not, it can be adjusted from there. Ramp was not easy because blue and white don't do it, and while we didn't have as heavy of a budget, or as strict as a budget, I should say, I put that into a lot of the other stuff. So we're going to go with a Soul Ring, an Arcane Signet, a Felwar Stone, a Mind Stone, and a Prismatic Lens. The very common theme here is the casting cost of everything being 2, except for the Soul Ring, which is 1. So trying to keep it as low mana cost as possible so you can get it out there and get you ramped. It's not as heavy on the ramp as I wanted it to be, but you can only do so much on a budget and with what you have available as far as the 2 colors. There's not a lot. Creatures are light. We're going to go over them. The creatures start off with, all these creatures are going to do something to help prevent you from being attacked or prevent your opponent from being able to have things go off. So we start with a Containment Priest. Now, Containment Priest is probably the most important one in this deck for the simple fact that she's playing against the Dragon, and I believe it was Strafon. I can't remember if that was the one she said, but both of them can bring things into play for free. The reason why Containment Priest is the most important here is because it has Flash, which is great because you can surprise somebody with it in the middle, like on their turn. But if a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, you exile it instead. So if they put things out for free because they're not casting them, because it's telling you to put it into play, it exiles them instead of it coming into play. That's the key here. I couldn't find any other creatures that did that. I wish I could have. I would have put a bunch more in here if they were available. But this is for the low cost of less than $1. Containment Priest may be the most important card in this deck. Hushbringer. Again, these are all going to have effects that are Stax style or taxation on your opponent for them doing stuff. So this one, it causes things to come into play tapped on your opponent's side. I'm sorry, that's not that. That's another thing. This one makes it so that creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. That's to stop other stuff from happening. So there's nothing in here that's really going to be affected by that. All of your opponent's stuff that is coming into play, it will. Lavinia Azorius Renegade. Again, more Staxy stuff. It prevents them from being able to cast things with ramp. As long as it's mana rock, ramp, or they have lands in play that give additional more than 1 mana for each one. Strict Proctor. So this one, whenever a permanent enters the battlefield, causes a triggered ability to trigger. You can counter it unless they pay 2. Unsettled Mariner, Changeling, which doesn't really matter, but it's a 2-cast 2/2. And whenever you or a permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you counter that unless they pay 1. Now remember, whenever they're playing something, it already costs 1 more to cast, so now you're adding an additional 1 or it gets countered. Archon of Emeria, so this is the one that I was thinking earlier. It makes things come into play tapped on your opponent's side, and then the added ability of not being able to, each player can't cast more than 1 spell a turn, limiting how much stuff they can do. You too, but that's the point of this deck. You're okay with only playing 1 or 2 things at a turn. Even Mind Sensor helps limit searching, because you can't search your library. Now you can only search the top 4 cards of your library. Caliph, Beloved of the Sea. So this is in here because creatures and enchantments that you control have spells your opponents control cost 1 more to cast. That helps protect your enchantments, which there are many in here because, again, this is a Staxy build. That helps prevent you from being attacked, so you want to protect them. Eidolon of Rhetoric, same thing with the can't cast more than 1 spell a turn. You're going to see a bunch of them. Archon of Absolution helps prevent from being able to be attacked by adding a cost to them. Baird, again, another propaganda style card, if you will, and that's in here. I'll show you that later. It just makes it so they have to pay to attack again. Same thing with Windborn Muse. As you can see, that's what this build is all about. Whenever an opponent plays a spell for a player, that player sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 1. That's what Spell Tithe Enforcer does. Really good card, actually. And you can see it's foily because that's the mystery booster version. It only came in foil. Wandering Archaic was an interesting one. So this one's kind of fun because it allows you to play your opponent's stuff. So whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they have to pay 2. And if they don't, you get to copy whatever spell that they cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. Instants and sorceries only. Now, on the other side of it, I don't know how much you're going to really play this, but it's a sorcery. And it has it so that each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card and or an instant or sorcery from among them, puts the cards they revealed this way into their hand and the rest in the bottom of their library in a random order, and then each player gains 3 life. You're not really going to play that one. You're going to have Wandering Archaic out for the most part because you want to steal their stuff, make them... Most people are complacent and won't pay it, so you'll get to copy it. Depends on what they're playing. Could be some good stuff. And the last creature is Archetype of Imagination. So she's playing against a lot of flying creatures. I put this in here so that at least we can get this stuff on the ground. What I would suggest in the future, I don't have one, but it's a Teferi's Moat maybe in order here. This gives all your creatures flying and makes all your opponent's creatures not able to have flying and lose flying. So that was there for a little extra, jab, if you will. Some spells. We're going to go over 4 sections of spells here. We're going to do counter magic. We're going to do, defensive stuff. We're going to do searching, and we're going to do card draw. And it's going to be mostly counter magic. The counter magic is here so that you can stop the biggest threats on the board from even hitting the board if possible. Annul, obviously, that's more for screwing with your opponent, but there are a lot of artifacts and enchantments that really can ruin your day. So, and at 1 mana cost, 1 mana value, I'm never going to get used to that, by the way. 1 mana value, it's a pretty good inclusion in a lot of commander decks. Essence Scatter stops commanders from coming out. Arcane Denial, just pure goodness. Now, there is something cool about Arcane Denial I'll show you later in the Planeswalker section. Your opponent drawing 2 cards thing may not matter. But at least you get to draw a card. Remove Soul, again, more creature denial. Negate non-creature denial. Nullify creature or aura denial. Aura is not really so prominent unless you're playing against a Voltron deck, but it's possible. You may need something. It stops your opponent from casting something to stop your commander from being able to use its abilities too, by the way. Essence Capture, again, more creature denial. And the reason for all the creature denial is... one of the things that I've noticed with the Dragon is that they rely on a lot of ramp, and they rely on a lot of getting it out as fast as possible, and then keeping the cost down by protecting it. If you can counter it, you at least add the commander tax. You're also taxing them when they're trying to cast it for the first time by making it a little harder, because you're making it so they can't cast things with mana rocks and stuff like that, so they have to have the lands in play. It's a great way to kind of subdue the 5-color Dragon decks. Counterspell, just because it's counterspell. Unwind, it's a non-creature counter, but it lets you untap 3 lands so you can have mana up for their turn. Absorb, more counter magic, but it lets you gain 3 life. And then Render Silent so that you can counter something and then they can't play nothing else for the rest of the turn. So that's the counter magic. It's all pretty straightforward, and it's mostly geared towards stopping heavy creature commanders like the Ur Dragon or Straphon, I believe, is the one she was playing. You could change some things out in that scenario, and if you wanted to really get into the expensive part, you can start doing things with Mana Drain, Force of Wills, and the one from Commander that's free, but those are so expensive. They're a third of the cost of the deck each. So Destruction Time. So obviously targeted removal. We're going to do some targeted, some not so targeted. The best ones are Path to Exile and Swords of Plowshares, especially because they're in white and they're one to cast. Armageddon. All right, so we're a tax deck, so I know that this is a dick move, but what better than to Armageddon and clear the lands off the board on your opponent's side when you have your commander out and things are costing more to begin with? It's a great way to do it. I know it's not the greatest thing and people really hate on you, but guess what? Don't care. This is to help save you from having to deal with all their crap. And this helps your win con because I have a win con in here that requires time. So keep that in mind. Settle the Wreckage because I wanted instant board wipe ability. I understand that giving your opponent the ability to put lands into play is a bad thing, but sometimes you really need that reset button to be an instant. So Settle the Wreckage it is. And then, of course, I've got Route in here as well because it can be an instant if need be. Austere Command, so you get to choose what you want to remove. I like that this one gave me the choice on the creatures. That's why I chose it, because a lot of the creatures in here are 3 mana or less, so you get to keep yours. And if you're facing the Ur Dragon, you're literally facing some of the higher mana cost dragons, and recently they've come out with a lot. All those ancient ones coming into play, this can take care of them. Supreme Verdict, can't be countered and just destroys everything. It's a nice board wipe, it's a great reset. And then Time Wipe, so you can get your guy back. Most likely it's going to be the Grand Arbiter if he's in play. You're going to get that back. Or if you don't mind paying the commander tax, if you don't have to worry about that, you're going to have somebody in play that's going to help prevent you from being attacked, especially after you maybe Armageddoned. So you can get one back. So those are the destruction spells I've chosen for this build. They should work, and if not, we can adjust it from there. We've got tutors. So we've got Merchant Scroll, so you can go find the blue instant or sorcery. So if you need that counter spell or whatever it is that you may need, you can go find it. Solve the Equation, so you can go find that instant or sorcery. It doesn't have to be blue this time, and that's the bonus to not being a Merchant Scroll, is that you at least get to go find a white one in this deck. And then Aetherize, not a tutor, but a good defensive thing. Should have probably been in the other section, but I apologize. I put this together, and I guess I missed it. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. For all those people that are using the free, put something in from your hand into play, guys, this guy's a nice little addition, because then they put it on to play to do all their little fancy shit, and then you just return them all to their hand. Now they have a handful, and probably can't cast it because you're Stax. Card draw was light on this one, only 2. It was Brainstorm and Anti-Cognition. Now, I chose Anti-Cognition. Oh, I screwed up. I apologize. That's why I mixed the 2 cards in together. Anti-Cognition was actually a counter. My bad. I only have 1 draw card. This counters a creature or a planeswalker. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, it counters it, and then you scry 2. Otherwise, they have to pay 2. Sorry, I messed that up. The only card draw spell in here is Brainstorm, and Brainstorm is in here because, well, you can't have Ancestral Recall, so it helps to fix your hand. So my apologies, I went out of order. I don't know how that happened. Next, we're going to go with artifacts in 2 sections. We're going to do protection artifacts. You want to protect your commander, Whisper, Silk Cloak, and Mask of Avacyn. I had to keep the cost down monetarily, so I couldn't use things like Lightning Greaves, because for some reason they have been hitting the $7 to $10 mark, and for that, I can just use a Mask of Avacyn. So I did that. It helps buff up your own guy to give him a bigger butt, so he survives more damage, and then Whisper, Silk Cloak makes things unblockable. Not really that big of a deal. It's the Shroud part that makes a big difference. So a couple things to protect your commander, and then obviously some Staxy stuff on the artifacts. So Mindlock Orb makes it so your players can't search their library. I know that I have a couple cards in here that search your library. There's not very many. This is definitely better against your opponents than it is bad for you. Trust me on that. Especially since I built this so it doesn't have a lot of card search. So, and there's no fetch lands or anything like that. So it's actually pretty good. Norn's Annex, and again, it's the mystery booster kind because why not? So it's foil, and it is a propaganda style artifact, only they have to pay either 2 life, which I'm sure they're okay with paying if they need to, or a white. Most people don't play white in Commander, so they'll probably end up paying the 2 life. Eventually that can whittle somebody down, and that's for each creature, by the way. So if they want to really come at you, imagine them paying the 2 life for Norn's Annex and then you returning all their creatures that they just attacked with to their hand. It's a pretty funny scene. And then God Pharaoh's Statue. So it's a very high casting cost, mana value, whatever. Artifact, but it helps keep your spells down. It makes them cost 2 less to cast. Always a bonus in a deck like this. And then at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life. So this kind of drains down your opponent's over time. Remember when I said earlier that over time this deck will start to win out? This is one of those ones. It's not the only one, but it's one of them. Enchantments we have, and this is where we're going to go heavy into the not being able to attack. We're going to go with war tax. So now you get to actually add extra cost for them to attack you. Propaganda, as I've been talking about, makes them have to pay 2 for each one to attack. So imagine all that stuff going on. They have to pay so much just to attack. Imagine if you just return them all. Imprisoned in the Moon is one of my favorites for locking down a commander because it actually takes a creature, land, or a planeswalker. Most likely you're going to use their commander, which is a creature. It now becomes a colorless land and has just tapped to add a colorless mana to your mana pool with no other abilities because it loses them. It's kind of funny to do that to the Ur Dragon or any of your opponent's commanders in general because then they just sit there. And unless they have something that sacrifices a freaking land, which there aren't many, there are some, but there aren't many, it just sits there for most of the game looking dumb. Arcane Lab, players can't play more than one spell. I'm trying to limit the amount of stuff that can be happening at the same time while you're building your strategy up. Darksteel Mutation, same thing as the Imprisoned in the Moon. This one actually is funnier because now it's indestructible, so they really need to just make it a sacrifice. Not as useful as Imprisoned in the Moon, at least it's harder to find. People don't usually put a lot of stuff to sacrifice land in. They do, however, put things to sacrifice creatures, so unfortunately, while funny, it's not as effective, but it does make it an 0-1 indestructible, which means they have to sacrifice it. They can't do much else with it, unless it gets exiled for some reason. I didn't put any exile effects in here either. Ghostly Prison, just like Propaganda and War Tax and all that. Rule of Law, same thing as, where is it? Arcane Lab. Again, players can't play more than one spell, limiting everything down. Aura of Silence, so this one's an interesting one. Artifact and enchantment spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast, so more taxing. And then you can sacrifice it if you need to, or in response to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. So at least you get a use out of it if it does get targeted. And then Sphere of Safety. There's recently been somebody in some of the groups going around saying that, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but from Invasion, there's a blue Collective Restraint, I think it is. It was better than Sphere of Safety. I have to disagree because it has a cap. You can only get it to be, I think it's up to 6. You can get it up to however many enchantments you have in play. Helps prevent somebody from attacking you and does it just like the rest, which they stack on top of each other. So imagine you've got a Propaganda and you've got, where's it at? And a Ghostly Prison. So now you're paying 2, 2, and now 2, plus itself, so 3. It gets pretty taxing after a while. All right. We got 2 Planeswalkers that we're going to go with. We've got Dovin, Hand of Control. So artifacts and instants and sorcery spells your opponent's cast cost 1 more to cast. So again, taxing more. I don't really think that I'm really not going to suggest taking any counters off them. But it says until your next turn, you can prevent all damage that would be dealt to you by target permanent and opponent controls. In a break glass in case of emergency situation, I guess that would work. I mean, you're trying to keep as many counters on him as possible so he stays alive as long as possible so you can keep taxing your opponents. This is why the Armageddon, while it's a dick move, it still works in this kind of a deck. And then Narset. I said earlier, don't worry about the Arcane Denial, them drawing 2 cards because each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, so they'll only be drawing 1 at max. And then if you need to, you can also go searching and digging for non-creature, non-land stuff that you need. So both very useful in this deck, both very needed. And finally, we've got the section that really shows off what can really be done. So I mentioned earlier that I'm missing the card. It's Drannith Magistrate. It says that opponents can't play any card, I wrote it down so I could remember it exactly. It says opponents cannot cast spells from anywhere but their hand. And then you have Knowledge Pool. Knowledge Pool has Imprint, and the Imprint says that when it enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top 3 cards of their library. Whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, that player exiles it. And then if a player does, he or she may cast another non-land card exiled with Knowledge Pool without paying that card's mana cost. So they are a lock combo. Together, the 2 out mean that your opponent cannot play anything at all because they can't play anything that's not from their hand. And when they go and play something from their hand, it exiles, and then they go and try to cast whatever's been exiled with Knowledge Pool, and they can't because they cannot with Magistrate out. It is a lock. It literally locks your opponent out of the game. They cannot play anything. So what has to happen there is that when you play something, you have to have something that does not destroy artifacts or creatures at all. That's where you have to just sit there and discard stuff if you get too many cards in your hand. Do not play anything while they're in play. Do not play anything that would break the combo. That's all you got to do. Sit there, and then we're going to go into the win con, which is next. First one, Azor's Elocutors. Nobody ever plays this. I love this card. So, at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a filibuster counter on Azor's Elocutors, and then if it has 5 or more, you win the game. The downfall is whenever a source deals damage to you, remove a filibuster counter from it. So, it's a 3-5. That 5 means that it's going to be really hard to remove. It's going to be really hard to kill. Obviously, in Commander, people play things that don't do damage to other things. They literally play things that I have in here, like Swords of Plowshares, or any of the stuff that literally is targeted removal. Especially in Black, you have a bunch of it. The reason why this deck works is because you can Armageddon the lands away while this is in play. I told you, there's a setup here that takes a while. It takes 5 turns to do. So, while they're building, you're building, and you're going to win. Okay? So that's the first win con. Second win con is Approach of the Second Sun. So, if you've never seen it before, I'll let you sit here and read it, but I'll explain. So, you cast it the first time, you gain 7 life. You shuffle it, not shuffle it. You put it into your deck. I think it's the 7th card down. Yeah, 7th card from the top. And then the next time, remember this next one. Okay, if it gets counted on the first cast, it doesn't really matter. If it gets counted on the second one, let me see that. All right, if Approach of the Second Sun was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun, you win the game. Otherwise, you put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. So, it does matter, actually, if it's countered either one, because it goes to the graveyard if it gets countered. It has to get played, and it can't be countered. Most of the time, not a lot of people play a lot of counter magic, but if you're playing a blue player, you're going to have to bait the counter magic out to get this to go through. So, the second time it's cast in a game, you win. Those are the 2 win cons I have in here for you. Hopefully, this does what you wanted to do. I don't like to give names out, but I will say the lovely lady who has purchased this deck. She's already paid for it. I'm just waiting for the damn 2 cards to come in. Hopefully it does what you wanted. Hopefully I've done exactly what you need, actually. And if there's any issues you have, please let me know, and I will go ahead and try to fix them in any way that I can. And that is my deck for the week. We're going to be doing a couple more because I've got more orders from other people still to come. I'm never getting back to doing my own stuff at this point. It's all custom builds for the next couple weeks. And, you know, I'm not going to apologize for that. It's actually giving me the money that I've been needing so that I could go out and get the thing I've been complaining about for a while, which was I've gotten 5 boxes of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty set boosters that I can start opening, which I hadn't gotten to yet, and it's been a while since it came out. So, with that being said, do me the favor, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to share it out to somebody, that would be lovely as well. You can go ahead and do that. I'm sure there's a lot of people looking to build a Grand Arbiter Augustin deck. I know I am, and I'm going to try to take a similar version of this and build it for myself. So, and put that in my 32 deck challenge. That's my time for the week. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your week, and I will see you all next Friday. Have a good one.